My channel. I'm Mr. Global, globally recognized oil and gas expert, Matt Randolph. We're going to talk about peak oil theory. Peak oil, a theory in crisis. Why predictions keep failing. The concept of peak oil, the point where global oil production reaches maximum level before entering terminal decline, has been, a scientific theory and a cultural prophecy, for lack of a better term. But why has it been so consistently wrong? And does it still matter?
Okay, well, here's the U.S. Energy Information Administration. Let me just pull that up there. Petroleum and other liquids production, U.S. field production. And this is the peak that Matt talked about that Hubbard predicted. And as you can see, he predicted it correctly for field oil. And then around this time is when fracking really started to take over and the technology became mature. And so, like he said, production went way up there. And he's saying, well, everybody predicts the end, right? They predicted that this would be peak oil and it would go down here, but it didn't. It went up here. So everybody's wrong. What does it matter? It's a cultural thing. No, I disagree. I believe that you have to say which specific prediction was wrong and then explain why it's not wrong. But I'll make a prediction right here and you can prove that I'm wrong. So I'm going to say right here that although we experienced this was the actual net production that we experienced, and it went like this. So this is all wrong. This did not happen. This is what happened. Now, why did this happen instead of this? Because back here, when you were drilling these vertical wells, you'd put essentially 1 barrel of oil in to run the machinery, right? The pumps and the derricks or whatever, and the trucks, and you get out 100 barrels of oil. But today, for horizontal fracking, you have to use a lot of energy to pump water, sand, steam, chemicals, whatever, into these horizontal wells, basically blow up, frack the oil out and then get it out. So you're spending a ton of, let's just say, I'm going to say 10 barrels for every 100 barrels. So the question is, on this, we can assume that this is, if we just say, okay, it's 1 barrel per 100 barrel, we can assume that the actual net recoverable oil is this. It's close enough to this, it doesn't make a difference. We can use this as a proxy. And again, we can use it as a proxy going down. So I'm going to just start from the beginning here. So let's just, like I said, we're talking 1 barrel for every 100 barrel. This is how we're going. But then fracking takes a tremendous amount of energy. It takes the oil all this oil that you're producing, you have to feed it back into the system. So you're feeding all this oil back in and you're actually netting this. So Matt, you need to prove to me, how much oil exactly are we using to produce this oil? Because I believe it is significant. That's my theory. I'm saying it's this much. Is that wrong? Do you think that the line is like this? Or is it like this? Or is it like this? These are the things that we don't know about current fracking technology. So you can't just look at production numbers and say, oh, well, look, fracking it made this huge increase in oil production. Yeah, but if you spent a lot of oil getting it, does that really count, right? I mean, we only use the net amount of oil coming out of these fields, not the full amount. So that's my first critique of what he is talking about.
Oh, man. And then 1956, Marion Hubbard, he forecasted the global peak by 2000. He was wrong by decades. 2005, 2008. Experts like Matt Simmons and Kenneth Defies, they declared peak oil had arrived. This was right before the U.S. shale boom, and they claimed peak oil had already arrived.
So those guys made a prediction that there was going to be peak oil around 2005, 2008, which is in this period here, right? That's interesting because, the great financial crisis happened right here. Banks almost going under. Isn't that interesting? I mean, is that a coincidence or what? That we reach peak oil and then almost the banking industry almost fully implodes. And I'd make the argument that, maybe it wasn't subprime that brought houses down. It was that people didn't have enough energy to maintain them because all properties require energy to mow the lawn, to fix things, whatever. And there wasn't enough energy to grow the economy because there wasn't enough oil or gas because we'd reached peak, whatever. And that's why we had the great financial recession. So that's my belief. We have production problems right here. We're basically getting at the end of the Prudhoe Bay and the big spike from the Gulf of Mexico. So the U.S. is having production problems. And so we have this huge, almost near 1929 depression. Then it's 2010, right, where fracking really starts to become technologically mature, and that gets us out of it, and has been getting us out of it till recently. But now I think, as I said, on this stuff, is it really that, or is it this? And now we have this huge move to gas, LNG, which I'll get into later. But again, no, I don't think they were wrong. I think actually they called it perfectly. But we choose not to make that connection to the great financial crisis.
And in the 2020s, a lot of analysts now argue that peak demand, not supply, will come first due to electric vehicles and renewables. And I completely agree with that. We used to talk about peak oil production. And when will we produce so much oil we literally cannot produce anymore? We don't talk about that anymore. Now we talk about peak oil in terms of demand. Because renewable energy, electric vehicles, everything involved with the energy transition is likely to curb oil demand long before we reach our production capabilities. And I agree with that 100%.
Matt, my fellow ranter, cynic, skeptic, demand, that ain't a thing. That isn't a thing. You own some oil wells, right? Well, I demand you give me some oil, okay? I have some money. I demand you give me some oil. Do you have to give me some oil? No. You don't have to sell me some oil. That ain't a thing, okay? I mean, you're getting confused here. You're drinking the recent Kool-Aid. It's not a question about demand. It's a question about allocation. The question of the world going forward is who gets the oil, not demand. It's like if food is running out in the forest or whatever, and there are a bunch of animals, what happens? They become more competitive, right? And some will try and kill others and whatever, and that's what we're heading into. We're already in World War, right? So people will get more competitive, and it won't be a question whether everybody can basically demand a certain amount of oil and get it. It'll be a question of whether they can get it at all at any price. That's the future. But, okay, maybe you're not quite as cynical and skeptical as to me. But I feel like, you've got to get your head straight here. Demand is BS. Oh, yeah, its demand is going down. No, demand isn't going down. What's happening, and this is part of Trump, one of your favorite subjects, is people like Trump are saying, you know what? You got enough money, you get oil, or you get whatever you need, right? If you have the wealth, if you have the power, you get it. And if you don't, you do not get it. I don't care what you say about demanding and rights and this. No, sorry, you don't get it. Demand is nonsense. And, who am I to argue with them? Who are you to argue with them? Demand is a BS concept. It is not about demand. It is about allocation. It is about the rich pushing the poor out of oil, and that's what's going on. So when you say, demand's going to go down and EVs are going to help. Hey, EVs are a status symbol. EVs are expensive. They're more expensive than regular cars. They are not cars for regular workers. How many EVs are there out in Texas or Oklahoma, right, working on these oil rigs? EVs aren't a thing. I mean, they're not a thing of economic production, is what I should say. But these electric stuff doesn't generate real economic power like you get from oil. There's no battery that runs an aircraft. Without oil, every plane in the sky falls out. Every single one. There's no substitute for jet fuel. You know this. And what about all the diesel trucks, the diesel trains, the heavy fuel oil ships? All come grinding to a stop. This electrification stuff you say you agree with. Hey, buddy, seriously, all right. But, I think you're going to change your thinking on this and just say, well, I sounded foolish back then where I said, oh, demand's going down, so we won't need as much oil. Well, no. Okay, well, I mean, yeah, the amount of people getting real oil is definitely going down, but not because they're demanding less, okay? That's what I think. So anyway, I wish that the rant I just said was better, but you get the idea.
But what about BP? BP suggests demand could double by 2050. Listen, BP is nuts. Demand is not going to double by 2050. That's not a thing.
Okay, my kids are here. Grandkids are here. I got to wrap this up. BP's right. Demand is going to double, but they're not going to get it. Everybody's going to want that oil, but they're not going to get it. So no, it is a thing that demand is going to increase. Just look at the demographics. But sorry, they're not going to get it. And that is really what you get wrong about peak oil. Again, you don't factor in the energy costs that you're putting in to get the oil. The oil quality gets worse and worse, more and more expensive to get, leading to lower production. There's more demand, but people can't get it, so they're just going to fight over it. If you have dollars, you can get oil. You don't have dollars, you are SOL. Everybody in the world that doesn't have access to dollars, SOL. Or if they don't have access to something that they can sell to the Middle East or to Russia to get the oil, again, SOL. Demand, it ain't a thing. Power, that's a thing. Allocation is what we're going to talk about, is what it's going to happen. Anyway, I got to wrap this up.